Hello friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda and this is Birch and Lily. Today I'm going to be doing a special video. I wanted to try this out. I've seen a couple other people do this type of video before and I really enjoyed it. So I thought I would dip my hands into the pot. Is that the phrase? But I thought I would give this a try and see what you all thought of it. So I'm going to be talking about the top 10 sweater / cardigan patterns in my knitting queue on Ravelry. Yeah, I have a good collection here. There's a couple cardigans, some sweaters. I think they're all beautiful. So yeah, I've got some notes about all of these patterns that I'm very interested in knitting and I thought you would all love to see as well. So before we jump on in, there are a few places you can find me if you want to see what I'm doing weekly outside of YouTube. birchandlilyfiber.com is my website where I sell hand-dyed yarn. You can also find me on Instagram at birch.and.lily, and everything else, my Ravelry, my Patreon, that will all be linked down below in the description, as well as links to all of the patterns that I talk about today. I guess I should say as well before I get started what I'm wearing. This is my port sweater. It's a pattern by Ozetta that I knit out of Wool Dreamers Mota. Held double with my hand-dyed Surrey alpaca base, Birch Surrey. I believe it's called Blanco, but just the undyed colorway of Wool Dreamers Mota, held with my Sugar Plum Fairy Surrey, which is hard to see. I've talked about this before. There's a whole reason as to why it's hard to see, which is my fault, not the yarn's fault. So this is my port sweater. The only modification that I did make to this pattern as I tested the pattern is that the sweater calls for a really long single layer collar, and I did take that collar, which I knit to full length, folded it inside the sweater and whip stitched it down. But otherwise, this is knit to pattern. So let's jump into the sweater patterns that I am interested, sweater and cardigan patterns that I am interested in possibly knitting this year. These are in no particular order, and we'll see how this goes with reading notes and talking. I might look down at my notes more than usual, but I will have photos kind of scrolling through on the screen for you to look at the sweaters while I'm talking, so hopefully that is okay. The first sweater that I'm really interested in knitting is called the Helia by Joanna Ang. And it is a sweater that calls for a fingering weight yarn held double with lace to hit about a worsted weight. I think if I was to knit it, I would just use worsted weight to make something really big and squishy, because this pattern has cables on the sleeves. The whole body is just a normal stockinette, but then the raglan turns into this really beautiful cable pattern that runs down the sleeves that I just love. This pattern is available in sizes extra small through 5XL, and I have the measurements written down here as well. So from a 98.5 centimeter bust to a 154.5 centimeter bust. In inches, that is 38 3/4 inches to 60 3/4 inches. So I think it's a really size inclusive pattern. Anyone can knit that, which is great. I've tried really hard. I believe everything that I've put in here is a size inclusive pattern. I want you all to be able to knit it. And yeah, the pattern has quite a bit of ease also, about 12 to 25 centimeters of positive ease, or about 4 3/4 to 9. I wrote 3 halves, but that can't be right. I'm gonna say about 9.5 inches of positive ease. And yeah, I think it's really, really beautiful. The split hem, the cables, the raglan, I think it's going to have a beautiful fit. As well, it includes something that I've really been into lately, which is the rolled collar. So yeah, beautiful pattern, really, really excited about that one. As well, something that I may have swatched for today, and I have to show you the yarn that I want to knit it up in. This is from my shop, which I was talking about the color earlier, Sugar Plum Fairy. We're doing round 2, and I'm going to knit it up on Birch sock. But this pattern is the Dear Duomo. The pattern is from Seunghee, and it calls for a fingering weight held with a suri once, or a lace weight once again. And that is what I'm going to do, is hold the fingering and the lace. It does also say that you can just use a DK weight held on its own, but I really want to have something nice and airy and fluffy, cloud-like. So that is what my plan is for the Dear Duomo. This again comes in many sizes. I do believe it's labeled in numbers as opposed to like extra small, small, etc. But it goes from 90 centimeters to 170 centimeters, which is about 35.5 to 67 inches. And it calls for 15 to 20 centimeters or 6 to 8 inches of positive ease. So really, really nice, cozy, big, warm sweater. I have written here, like I keep saying, it's a simple but cozy pattern. It is knit bottom up, which is something I'm not always a huge fan of. Knitting it bottom up will give it a dropped sleeve, kind of like this sweater has. This one is knit top down though. But knit bottom up, so it's a little bit harder to tell the length your sweater is going to be, but if you take maybe, for example, a sweater you really like the length of and measure from the hem to the underarm, that'll give you kind of an idea of how long you'll have to knit the body before you start doing shaping for the sleeves and stuff. It also has included a really cool technique to pick up stitches and make your collar really neat looking. So I'm excited to be able to try that out as well and learn something new. And then I do believe it also has optional faux seams down the side with some purl stitches. Moving into a cardigan, this one, oh gosh, I'm so excited about all these patterns, so if I keep saying it, I apologize. But the Olive Cardigan V-neck is a gorgeous pattern designed by Knitting for Olive. The designer, I really hope I don't butcher this, but Pernille Larsen, but designed by Knitting for Olive. It is a gorgeous lace, all over lace cardigan, and it calls for 1 skein of fingering weight yarn held with 2 skeins of lace. I didn't write down, I don't believe it said on the Ravelry page about the weight that ends up to be. I think it said lace, but that obviously is not going to be correct if you hold a skein of fingering and 2 of lace. I think you'd be sitting around a DK leaning to worsted weight, but I think with this pattern, the fingering weight held double with the lace really gives you the gorgeous look that it has, so I'd be wary to use a DK or worsted weight. Now, if you wanted to try and you hit gauge, it's up to you, but I think for me, at least, holding the fingering and the lace together is what really makes this pattern beautiful. So the pattern comes in sizes extra small through 4XL, 96 centimeters to 144 centimeters, or 37 3/4 inches to 56 3/4 inches. And there is no ease stated anywhere I could see on the Ravelry page, but looking at the photos, which I'm sure are up on the screen, I can say it probably has a decent amount of ease to it, at least probably 4 inches or so. I love how light and airy the lace makes it look, and the buttons I think are a really fun touch too, because you can either wear the cardigan buttoned up with a tee underneath or keep it open. There's a lot of options with the cardigan with the buttons included. The other thing that I think is really nice is with knitting a cardigan, you're knitting most of the pattern flat, so the lace will kind of keep the knitting interesting. There'll be less purling because you're doing something on every side of the pattern. It's not just a simple stockinette garment where you're going to be knitting on one side and purling on the other. So a gorgeous cardigan that I think would be really nice to dress up a lot of different outfits. The next pattern I have written down is the Kerr sweater. It's a pattern by Rebecca Clow. If you watched one of my most recent podcast episodes, I had just finished up knitting the Cargill sweater from Rebecca, and that pattern was just so stunning that I know this one is going to be beautiful as well. I also love how many options this pattern has, and it's something a little bit different because it has a color work included. So this pattern calls for 2 different colors of DK weight yarn. It's sized with numbers, so no extra small through extra large, but there are a lot of size options. The pattern goes from about 70 centimeters to 170 centimeters in the bust. So that's about 27.5 to 67 inches bust measurement. And it calls for 2 to 10 centimeters or 1 to 4 inches of positive ease. It is a dropped shoulder sweater, and it has this really, really beautiful colorwork motif going across the bust and then also moving across the sleeves. They kind of all line up, so it looks like one big full colorwork motif. I think that's really cool, something a little bit different. And the other fun thing about the color work in this pattern is that Rebecca has included 2 different options on how you can do the color work. So you can do a thick band or you can do a thinner one, depending on how much color work and depending on how much yarn you have for the color work in the sweater. And yeah, like I said, I have knit one of Rebecca's patterns before. They are very well written. They have lots of information. So I think this would be a really fun knit. Also to use up some of those random leftover bits you have possibly of DK sitting around your stash from other projects. Another really beautiful, simpler sweater that I want to knit a lot is the first sweater. This pattern is from Lizzie, Hester. And the main reason I want to knit this is because I've always wanted to knit fisherman's rib, but I'm too scared to do a full sweater of it in fingering weight because I've heard it's a lot of work. So this pattern calls for fingering weight held with lace. So hitting about a DK weight gauge. I do think the pattern did say you could hold DK single as well to knit this up. The sizes, again, are numbered in this pattern, but they have a really great range, going from about 92.5 centimeters to 172.5 centimeters, so about 37 to 69 inches. The pattern does call for about 12.5 to 17.5 centimeters, or 5 to 7 inches of positive ease. So a really nice, big, squishy garment. Again, it is knit top down, and it has gorgeous fisherman's rib balloon sleeves. I think they would be so cozy and warm and airy with the fingering and lace held double. The pattern also includes another beautiful folded down double ribbed collar on it. And it also comes in a cardigan version. So if you aren't needing another sweater, you could also purchase the cardigan version. It looks very similar. It just has obviously the split down the front with some buttons. But another really, really beautiful and size inclusive pattern. I know I've been showing a lot of simple stuff, but I promise we're going to be getting into some more complicated patterns as well. But this one I think is a really great staple. This is the Gartergan by Tori Yu. It is a pattern that calls for DK weight, and it is a cardigan knit completely in squishy garter. So the really nice thing about that is there's not a lot of purling back and forth on the wrong side again. You'll be knitting most of the sweater back and forth to give that really beautiful garter texture. This pattern is also numbered in sizes, but very size inclusive. There are options for 102 centimeters to 183 centimeters, or 40 inches to 72 inches in the bust. And the pattern calls for a lot of positive ease so that you're able to pull the cardigan around you and feel really cozy. So about 25 to 30 centimeters or 10 to 12 inches of positive ease. Like I said, not very much purling. I haven't looked through the whole pattern myself, but the fact that it's knit in garter is going to save you a lot of purling. And there's also a vest option included in the pattern. So if you're not feeling like a full-on full sleeve length cardigan, you can also do a vest that is open in the front. There are no buttons included on this cardigan, which I think would be totally fine. Or maybe if you're feeling adventurous, you could hack it and put some buttons on there as well. And the pattern does have a dropped shoulder, so that's probably also part of the reason that there is a lot of positive ease included in the pattern. So cables. I haven't really talked about cables too much yet, but this pattern is definitely in my queue. This is the Arctic Light Sweater, a pattern by Veronika Lindberg. It is knit out of lace held double with DK, so it hits about a DK gauge, leaning on worsted, and it is available in sizes extra small through 3XL. So 92.5 centimeters to 158 centimeters, or 38.75 inches to 66.25 inches. The pattern calls for 10 to 20 centimeters of positive ease, so approximately 4 to 8 inches of positive ease. And the one thing I did write down on here in capitals with many exclamation points is cables. If you're feeling like knitting cables, this pattern is full of them and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's worked from the top down, which I love, and it is knit slightly cropped, so it would look great with a pair of high-waisted jeans or some leggings. Super cozy, super beautiful. A sweater that's a little bit different and knit with a little bit lighter of a gauge is the Afra sweater. This is a pattern by Irene. I've been looking at this one for a long time. It does call for a DQ weight yarn, but looking at the gauge that it gives you on the Ravelry page, it's about a fingering weight gauge. So I think you could get away with using some of your fingering weight yarn in your stash to knit this sweater. It has numbered sizes again with many options, so no extra small through extra large or anything like that. I believe it's like 1 through 9, 1 through 10, something like that. But there are sizes from 80 centimeters to 141 centimeters, or 31.5 to 55.5 inches. And the sweater calls for about 0 to 15 centimeters or 0 to 6 inches of positive ease. Looking at the photos that are available on Ravelry and digging in the back of my brain, I think the model is wearing about 4 inches of positive ease on their sweater. And I do think that looking at the sleeves, the pattern includes, you definitely want a little bit of positive ease on the body. So the sleeves, as I said, are gorgeous, but they are a really, really big balloon sleeve. So I think having that little bit of positive ease, but not too much on the body, will kind of balance out those sleeves. Really impactful, gorgeous, and unique pattern. I love how the designs on the whole pattern are made with ribbing, and there's kind of this mountain motif going on. It's just very different from a lot of other garments that I've seen, and I love that it also has a V-neck as well, so a little bit nicer of a transition piece from like winter to spring or fall to winter, not as warm as something that has a really, really high collar. This pattern is also knit from the top down, which is my preference. Easier to try on. 2 more garments left to talk about. One is a cardigan and one is a pullover style. Let's talk first about the cardigan though. This one is a little bit different, a little more unique. It doesn't have as many sizes available, but I think the reason for that is the fact that this sweater doesn't really have a lot of shape to it. It's a big box with sleeves. But this is called the Cottage Cocoon cardigan. This was designed by Trish Hernacki, but she did design it for Sewrella yarn. So if you're looking for it on Ravelry, it is published under Sewrella yarn. This is knit with a worsted weight, and I think there's good reason for that because it's very, very large. Like I said, it's basically a rectangle with some sleeves attached, and that is why it is called a cocoon cardigan. You're meant to just grab it and wrap it around your whole body and feel really cozy and warm. It reminds me a lot, if you're my age, of like I think it was either Aritzia or TNA that had sweaters very, very similar to this. The gray ones, and I think they had like a stud or something on the back of them. I'm sure they came in other colors but gray, but I remember gray. But they had a little stud on the back of them and they had a very similar fit to this. But this sweater is cabled, unlike those Aritzia ones. So the pattern is only available in 3 sizes. The first one spans from extra small to medium, the second from large to 2X, and the third from 3X to 5X. And I did write down, I couldn't find any like super specific measurements, which is a little weird. But they did say the garment, the first size would come out to approximately 44 inches. They didn't give me centimeters and I didn't convert it. I apologize. The second size would come out to about 49.5 inches and the third about 55 inches. I do think there is a lot of wiggle room with this pattern though, because like I said, it's just a big rectangle with some sleeves added on. With the large size of yarn that this pattern is knit out of, the worsted weight and the big gauge, I think it wouldn't feel like too much of a slog with the large size it is though, because it'll keep you really interested. There are a lot of cables and moss or seed stitch. It's hard to tell from the photo, but lots of really beautiful things to keep you interested while you're knitting the pattern. And I think it would be really nice to just throw on a day when you're feeling a little chilly and just want to warm up. This next sweater is another one knit in Fisherman's Rib, but it doesn't scare me because it's knit out of really, really bulky yarn. This is the Season Sweater by Ozetta. It's knit with worsted held with lace. So you're hitting about a worsted to Aran weight yarn that you're using for this project. It comes from extra small to 5XL, so about 98 centimeters to 173 centimeters, or 38.5 to 68 inches. The pattern does call for a lot of positive ease, about 13 to 17 centimeters or 5 to 6.5 inches. But I think the positive ease is totally worth it for the fit of this garment. It's beautiful. So it's knit top down in all over squishy Fisherman's Rib. There are 2 neck options included in the pattern. You can either do a folded over collar or just a nice little short collar as well. And the other really nice thing about Ozetta's patterns is they all include a lot of video tutorials. So if you're having a really hard time with a portion of the pattern, you can just click on one of those tutorials and see her doing exactly what you need to do. And I just find it a little bit easier when I'm having a hard time if I have a video tutorial available. So those are the top 10 pullover, sweater, cardigan patterns that I am kind of itching to cast on in the next couple months. We'll see which ones actually happen, but I hope I was able to inspire you and show you some maybe new designers, new patterns, something you haven't seen before. If you liked this video, let me know down in the comments, since this is something a little bit new on the channel. I'd love to hear what you thought and maybe some different patterns that you would like to hear about. I can do one about socks. I could do one about little known designers. There are a plethora of options of videos that I can do with this sort of topic, so let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do so you're kept in the loop every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again next week for a regular podcast episode. Bye!